honey.
Hey everybody, thank you for coming tonight. Want to wish everybody a happy holiday. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you have a good New Year as well. This is our last speaker series for this year, and then we start into next year. So thanks for coming. I want to remind everybody this is a hybrid meeting. So keep your conversations to a minimum. Respect the speaker and everybody here and people online as well. We have a great presentation for you tonight. I've been looking forward to this one. It's something we usually don't have, but it's about nocturnal creatures in the garden.
Not for scorpions, but that we have like a bulb and a sheet, and we go, me and some friends, and turn a light on in the middle of the night, and we attract moths to our light, which normally they'd be flying around if there's a full moon or something. So we're just kind of emulating the moon. It doesn't harm them or anything. They'll just come hang out at the sheet, and then they eventually fly off and fly away. But that's where I've gotten most of these pictures of sphinx moths. And these caterpillars here are probably things you've seen in your garden, which can do a lot of destruction, like tomato hornworms and variations of that. And those are all sphinx moth caterpillars. So as caterpillars, they can be pretty destructive. As pollinators, though, they do have a wide range of host plants. One of their favorites being the datura, which is pretty cool. So that if you go on lower Mount Lemmon in the middle of the night with a flashlight, you'll see tons of sphinx moths. There's all kinds of datura around there. We could do the next slide. Okay, so the introduction to my arachnids, the many slides. They're everywhere. Orb weavers. Most spiders aren't harmful to us. I'll just make that disclaimer. We have a couple of species, like a couple medically significant species, which you'll see on another slide. But I did want to note that the green spider down at the bottom, that's a green lynx spider. Those are often in gardens. They like hanging out on flowers or cactus, and they'll go after a lot of pollinators. Though not medically significant, like hospital significant, it would feel like a bee sting if you were to get bit. And they can actually spray their venom, which is pretty cool. They're really protective mothers. So they can spray their venom up to 8 inches, which is really neat. If you see a mom with an egg sac like that one over there, just don't get too close. I've never had one do that to me, and I take pictures of them all the time. That's my favorite spider. But they're pretty cool. They eat all kinds of crazy things. That one's eating a beetle, a little June beetle, and I've seen them eating wasps and bees and smaller bugs and things. You see a crab spider up there. You probably see those on flowers often. And that one was a pretty impressive meal there, like 3 times the size. And then over on the right side, maybe slightly less common things, but something we call a flatty. It's a very like dorsally compressed spider that you might see. They hang out on rocks and eat tiny little bugs. So in your garden, but not harmful to your garden. Harvestmen, same thing. We got jumping spiders, and then tailless whip scorpions. Anyone who might live around the Sabino Canyon area might see those. Those are going to be really regional, or maybe like far east side near Saguaro National Park. That's my favorite arachnid, so I had to throw it there. But you might see it in your garden. They really, they like rocky areas normally, and they like to be vertically compressed. So anything with a tight squeeze like this, they can be in. And they're harmless. They can't hurt you. They can't bite you or sting you or spray you or anything. They just look really intimidating. We can go to the next slide. I had to put tarantulas up there, the gentle giants, because they're all over town. So tarantulas, I feel like if you've seen a hole in your garden, it's very likely a tarantula, especially if it's just straight down into the ground with nothing around it. They come in these are mostly all the same species, like 90%, but we have like a dozen species here in Tucson. Mostly you'll see the Tucson blonde, that's the largest. But there's tons of dwarf species. And then this black one in the middle over here and on the left side, those are both another slightly smaller species than the blonde. But they're eating all kinds of things too. Up there you can see it eating one of those sphinx moth caterpillars. I've seen them eating lizards. And I've seen a picture of one eating a rattlesnake, a baby rattlesnake, which was pretty crazy. But yeah, they're gentle to us. They can be a little sassy if they want to be, but they're eating a lot of things that are in the garden. And actually, I'll make a note about their hole over there. Their hole is usually just horizontal on the ground. There's not really anything around it. If you see a hole that has like a little turret around it that's like covered with sticks and web kind of built up around the hole, that's a wolf spider. And tarantulas will just have nothing around it. Rodent holes tend to be sort of like in a wall of something. They're not really flat on the ground like that. So if you have a lot of those holes, you probably have a lot of tarantulas. Pretty cool. Next slide. Um, okay, so this one, more fun spiders, but I wanted to see if you guys can figure out which one is the recluse. And I say recluse because we don't actually have recluses out here, but we have a cousin, which is the Arizona brown spider. Same genus, different species, similar damage if it bites you. Not quite as bad as the Midwest cousin. But again, this is just to illustrate that there's a lot of lookalikes. Yes. Yep. Yeah. So a lot of the spiders over here, and you can probably see it better on the computer, but the top middle one is like flaming red. It looks really scary, but all of these are just ground dwelling spiders that aren't going to be harmful to us. And I'm sure all of these are in your garden. And they really like surfaces on the ground that have really tight horizontal spaces, like under bricks and things like that. So if you just lift rocks or bricks, you'll probably see these things scurrying everywhere. Top left, that is a wolf spider. That's our giant wolf spider, Hogna. It's the Carolina wolf spider, so it's the largest species we have out here. They have excellent eyesight. This right here is actually a mom with a bunch of babies on her back, so they have the little disco ball and glowing eyes. And they're really cool. They're excellent hunters. They don't bother us at all. They're also kind of intimidating, but this one right here is a net web spider. Can be kind of confused for a black widow. And their webs are really interesting. So if you've seen like really thick, sticky looking white webs anywhere, that's a net web spider. And they're kind of velvety looking, like a velvety black. This one right here, she's actually eating a kissing bug. So they really help regulate things that we don't want. They're really cool. We can go to the next one. These are our two medically significant spiders. I have 3 pictures of a black widow and then one of the Arizona brown spider. So these are the only 2 medically significant in Arizona where you would probably want to go to a hospital. You don't know how you're going to react. I just heard a story a couple days ago. This lady got bit, and it was confirmed. There's all kinds of stories about people getting bit by brown recluses. They're never confirmed. They get a bad rep because they're pretty shy. They don't really bite unless you're like accidentally squishing them, like between your clothes or something. But someone I just talked to was bit by one of those, has picture proof, and she didn't really think of what it was after it bit her. And a few days later, the wound started getting like black and kind of pussy. So she went to the hospital, showed them the picture, and they're like, "Yep, that's the Arizona brown spider." And she now has a scar that kind of looks like a bullet hole in her stomach, which is pretty crazy. But most spider bites are just going to leave a couple little puncture wounds that you won't be able to see, maybe some redness, and then it'll go away. Also wanted to note here, black widows aren't entirely bad. This one's eating a cockroach. A non-native cockroach, I'll say. Next slide. So, okay. I love sulfugids or camel spiders or sun spiders or wind scorpions or whatever you call them. Who has seen these? Okay, cool. So they're really fast. You might have seen them on the internet when there's a dude in the military with a gun and he's in Iraq holding up a 3-foot camel spider, which is photoshopped. These things only get up to about 5 inches maximum. But we have really big ones here in Arizona, which is cool. When I say big, they're like 3.5 inches. They're like that big, and that's a pretty big one. But they're really cool. They're pretty harmless. I included some pictures over to the far right of one biting my friend's finger. That was intentional because she was curious about how it felt. And we didn't harm the, yeah, after she did it, I did it. But she just picked it up and let it bite her, and you can kind of see the top photo there. It's pinching the skin, it's not actually breaking the skin, and that was a big one. He had a really good grip. She could feel the pinch, never broke the skin, hung on for a couple minutes. People all the time when they see these things, they freak out. Again, they're really fast, so I understand that, but they there's so many crazy stories about like I got bit by one of these and had some crazy infection or it sent me to the hospital, like all of these just really dramatized stories, but they don't have any venom in their mouth parts that would cause any of those reactions. They just have these four chewing mouth parts that kind of operate as like four separately angled jaws, and they tear things apart. But yeah, even that giant one couldn't break the skin on a finger. So hopefully that helps. If you ever see one, it's know that it can't really hurt you. That's me holding that big one up there. Most of the time they don't try to bite you if you just like act as a surface and they'll just run around. They're very energetic, but I also wanted to mention that if you look at them closely, they really look like Muppets. And they have little beady eyes and awkward large mouths and kind of little fuzzy heads. So I had to throw those up there. I love them. I think they're really cool. What was that? How, how did it feel when it bit me? It was just like a pinching, like if you pinch your own finger with your other finger, like not even really hard. It's a little startling because you know it's a bug doing it to you and you don't know. Like when you do it to yourself, it doesn't really hurt, but it's just like, all right, how bad is it going to get? But then it just stops and they give up because they can't get through. Even our finger skin is pretty thick. But also I wanted to show the variation on that. They come in all kinds of shapes and colors and sizes, and there's like tiny ones, and metallic ones, and black ones, yellow ones. Scorpions are all over the place, especially in your gardens, especially on the walls of your gardens. So I included the three most common species that we see in Tucson. So there's about 36 species of scorpion in the state of Arizona. Do you guys know which one is the bark scorpion? I mean, there's a couple images, but in this left image with the three here, can you tell which is the bark scorpion? No. Yep, top right. So they tend to have the males anyways, tend to have a really long, skinny tail. And they have very small pedipalps. They're also very skinny, and that's the only medically significant scorpion we have. So these other ones, this is a giant hairy scorpion and then a striped-tail scorpion. If you get stung by any of those, it'll feel probably a little less than a bee sting. But if you get stung by a bark scorpion, I've known a few people who've been stung, and it causes. I actually watched my coworker as he lifted a trash can, and I saw the slow motion of his hand going on top of a bark scorpion, and I was like, "Whoa, watch out!" But it was too late. He put his hand right on top, stung him right in the palm, and for the rest of the day, he had his hand. I have videos of it that are really cool, but his hand just pulsating all day, and he could feel it start to like move up his entire arm for most of the day. Initially, the hand was actually hot to touch. It was burning a little bit. And then he had like extreme sensitivity to his entire arm. And then did you want to add, or did you want me to tell what you shared with me? Okay, so I was just told that one potential remedy if you get bit or stung by a scorpion, and I haven't tried this myself, but she has tried this many times. If you get stung, especially by a bark scorpion, you put papaya on the sting, and the enzymes will have some interaction with the toxins that go in and lessen the reaction that you have. And you said within an hour or so, the pain is pretty much gone. She got stung going to the mailbox with sandals on the side of the foot, and then she ended up putting papaya on it, and the pain basically was gone within an hour. Taped the papaya, yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting. I kind of want to try that. There's all kinds of things. I've never been stung by a scorpion, but that is tempting. Um, I've heard that the giant hairies feel more like a bee sting. Um, this was a really cool pose. They're not usually this sassy, but this one was very upset with me as I moved him off the road so he wouldn't get squished with my phone, and he was like stinging my phone repeatedly. And then I just threw up some blacklight photos over there, one of each of the species, and then also a little reminder to check your irrigation boxes for fun things, not only scorpions, but potential snakes, rattlesnakes, or non-venomous, or tarantulas. I find tarantulas in there a lot, or net web spiders. So that one was cool. It was a mama with babies on her back still. That was pretty awesome. Next slide. All right, so we got the myriapods, which are the long, skinny things, millipedes and centipedes. You probably see lots of millipedes in your garden, especially. And I would say they're nocturnal to crepuscular, and they really like moisture. So after heavy rains and things, you'll see lots of millies. And they come in all shapes and sizes. These three are the same species. There's like an orange variation in some places in town, which is pretty cool. And then that tiny one, that's a full-size adult of another species. So they're all over the place, but they are awesome. They're the little cleanup crew, and they eat all of our dead things. Not, they might eat dead protein, but mostly like leaf matter, organic matter. Then we have centipedes, which are carnivores. I will make a little note though, the bottom left one, that's a house centipede, and they like to eat tiny bugs. They're very fast, and you might see them in your house. I've never seen them in a house. They're like lightning fast. It's crazy. And they're kind of intimidating with all of those long legs, but they're like the gentlest. You could pick those up, handle them. They won't do anything to you. I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying if. But the other centipedes, so we have a tiger centipede at the bottom right. That's a really common species. It's a little bit smaller, maybe like 4 inches or so. And then the red one, the two top photos, same species, different regions, but that is our giant desert centipede. And those have a pretty significant bite. And I included down here, there's a molt of one. They usually eat that, but we had that in captivity. My invert keeper coworker brought that to me to show me. And you can see, yeah, those pedipalps, how big they are. So they do inject a little bit of a venom, but it's more so just the pinching bite that would be really painful. I've heard it's an extremely painful bite. I've never been bitten myself, but don't try to pick one of those up. All right, next slide. Yes.
Question. I think it not.
Okay, yeah, so the millipedes. So millipedes are actually poisonous, so don't eat them. And they do secrete kind of like a little defense, which if they do it when they're on your hand, it'll actually dye your hand purple. Just like little spots, it's not anything extreme. Yeah. And you could feel the little pitter patter of their feet, but there's no venom in their feet or anywhere in their body. Yeah. Just if you eat them, they would probably make you throw up. Yeah. Yeah, don't eat one. You can play with them. Yeah, I pick them up all the time. They like to curl up in their little cinnamon roll. All right, so moving on from bugs. We have amphibians. We have tons of amphibians out here. I only did a couple slides. Who has seen frogs and toads in your garden? Okay, cool. Most of you. So we have 3 common species around here that would be in your garden. We have a 4th common species. They're not really, I don't think they would really be seen in your garden unless you live over by Sabino, but this one up here, the canyon tree frog, they like more like rock crevices and water sources. Usually like pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Water that's going to be year round, but around those rocky surfaces. So these are all over Sabino Canyon or Saguaro East. So I don't know if those would be as much in your yard. In my list up there, I did the 3 common, and then the 3 off to the right are the special mentions there. And those ones are here, likely not in your garden though. Bullfrogs, leopard frogs, I don't have pictures of those, not that I included. But over here, I wanted to show the different types of hides that they like to. We have some toads that have these little tiny holes, which are adorable. That Sonoran desert toad in the top right was just hiding under a rock, like a shallow, like sandy area with some water. And they will hide in rodent holes too. Oftentimes they take over rodent holes. And then over here, we just have a bunch of spadefoot toads, which are my favorite. They're so derpy and cute. They come in a few different shades of color, but they have vertical pupils, which is pretty cool. They're not true toads. They are technically a frog, but we just call them spadefoots. They have this little spade shape on their back feet, and it helps them dig. So they burrow into the ground. They kind of burrow in backwards. And at work, we know they're active because we have like a bunch of holes in their enclosure, but you don't see the. And they're really cool because they can actually, like most of the toads and frogs around here, they can actually stay underground for like 10, 11 months of the year, and then just come out during rainy season and they'll mate. They actually reproduce pretty quickly. They'll come out during the first rain or two to mate, and then within 6 to 8 weeks, their little their tadpoles turn into little froglets. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. They have to take advantage of all the temporary water we have. And they love doing that in ponds in gardens, or if you have any standing water. I've seen it happen also in animal water dishes, including at the museum in our like mountain lion enclosure. The water dish sometimes gets a bunch of tadpoles in it, which is pretty cool. So they will literally take any opportunity to lay eggs if they can during the summer. Next slide. More toads. Got red spotted toads, which look like little Pop-Tarts, and then Sonoran desert toads. And that's a little baby one. He doesn't quite have his spots visible. And as they get older, their spots fade a lot and they're just very tan. But all these toads and frogs have different toxins they can secrete, but none of them are really harmful to us. I wouldn't suggest licking any toads, but the ones that are most dangerous are going to be the Sonoran desert toad. Those are the ones where if your dog licks them, it can send it to the hospital or potentially be fatal. A lot of humans use them for like psychedelic drugs and stuff like that because it comes in such a potent quantity that within like 10 to 15 minutes you can have a reaction from being exposed to their toxin. And it can be fatal to humans too in the right dosages. But I don't know if you can really see it up here, but I wanted to show that juvenile Sonoran desert toad on the upper left. He actually has red spots on the lower part of his body. So when they're younger, they're really hard to tell apart from red spotted toads. And if you have them in your yard and you have a dog you're worried about, it's good to like double check on that, get a second opinion to make sure those ones might not be in your yard for your dog to be snacking on. But they're pretty toads. It's the largest native toad in the US. They can be, I think, like 3 or 4 pounds of weight, which is hefty for a frog or a toad. Down in the lower left, those are just toad tracks as one hopped out of the water. So if you see weird little tracks like that, it might be a toad. But they also will stay burrowed for 10, 11 months of the year. And then all of a sudden you moved into your house, and you've been there all year and you just have a random toad in your enclosed yard. You don't know how. It's because he's been living underground that whole time. And that happened to my mom last year. She's lived in her house for about 8 years and has never seen this toad. But yeah, they can live underground for a while and they're not really harmful. You can pick them up and just wash your hands after. Again, don't like lick them or rub them all over your body, but they're pretty slippery too. So you have to get a good grip if you're trying to like relocate one out of your grip. Also, they can lay up to 8,000 eggs in a season. So if you don't want a bunch of those little toads around, I think relocating to an area that's going to have some sort of water source is okay if it's within like that general area. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so that's all I had for amphibians. Then we got some snake stuff. Well, reptile stuff, I guess, in general. We got lizards, non-venomous snakes, and the venomous snakes, all of which can be in your garden. There's a lot of lookalikes, mimicry going on, and can you tell which one of these is the diamondback? Might be a little obvious since I cut off the tail. Yeah, so we have a lot of snakes that sort of mimic just visually, but also with their tails. They will still rattle their tails, usually like among leaf litter or something, and they'll make a pretty nice noise with that. That can be convincing. But we have a gopher snake on the right, top right, a night snake underneath, and then a lyre snake over here, and then that baby diamondback up top. And yeah, the babies too, they're a little harder to distinguish from other like non-venomous snakes. Yeah. We do get Mojave rattlesnakes. Yeah, so Mojaves here in Tucson, they're mostly on the far west side near the museum. They don't really get on like central or east Tucson. And then if you go out to Wilcox, they're all over the place. But yeah, Mojaves have a neurotoxin, the populations we have here, so they can have a different type of bite if you are to be envenomated by one of those. I didn't include any in my pictures just because they're not going to be really in yards in Tucson, but yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. Oh my God. Wow. Yeah. So for Zoom, there was in the audience, someone got bit by a Mojave rattlesnake and he had to get 20 bottles of anti-venom, you said? Wow. Where'd you get bit? On the hand? You tried to pick him up? Wow. 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 So within an hour of being bit, you said your hand was completely swollen. Yeah. Wow. Diamondback bite on the leg with flip-flops. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Fun rattlesnake bite stories. I want to hear more details later. But yeah, we have all kinds of snakes. I put a few little asterisks here for ones that aren't going to be as common at nighttime in the garden. They're more like crepuscular. A lot of our snakes, non-venomous snakes, are diurnal, more daytime. And then a lot of our venomous snakes are really temperature dependent, especially in the summer. They're going to be active at night. They like the 75 to like 90-degree range. So very temperature dependent. Our snakes out here don't really hibernate. They kind of brumate, which is a sort of a temporary hibernation where they can be active any day of the year. They'll come out to bask on a warm day, or if it rains, they'll come out, collect water droplets on their body, and drink it off of themselves, which is pretty cool. So you can see a rattlesnake any time of year, even in your garden. So always keep an eye out. But um, yeah, we can go to the next slide and look at some lizzies. So I got a few lizards. Lizards are a little harder for nighttime because most lizards are active during the day. Normally, when I see lizards at night, they're sleeping in a precarious position on a cactus or something. Um, but we have geckos, our western banded gecko, and it's our only native gecko in the Southwest. We have a couple, well, I should say in the Tucson area, we have a couple of invasives like the little Mediterranean geckos you'll see up on the wall by your porch light. They have very sticky feet so they can climb those vertical surfaces. Our Western banded geckos cannot. If you stress one of these guys out, they'll make a cute little chirping noise. Adorable. It sounds like a little bird. I did include horned lizards up to the top right. They're more crepuscular. They're not going to be active at night, but at sunset. And if you have one in your garden, you're really lucky. Maybe you have lots of ants that they're snacking on. And then we got Gila monsters. You're really lucky if one wanders into your yard. Um, Gila monsters are really awesome animals. They're very mellow. They don't really like confrontation. They will definitely get in a defensive mode if you get too close to them. But for the most part, they're usually just wandering through looking for eggs. They're nest raiders. So if you have bird nests in your yard and a Gila's wandering through, that's probably what it smells. They also go after tortoise eggs, pretty much any type of eggs or baby rodents. They will definitely try and get into any rodent holes if they can, and they'll eat everything in the nest. And they can eat up to 30% of their body weight in a single sitting. Um, yeah, so they don't have to eat many times in a year, maybe 5 times a year, and they're good. Yeah. How big of an egg? A chicken egg would be too awkward. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard for them to break chicken eggs. And for enrichment, we give them eggs sometimes and chicken eggs. We always have to like break it for them. But usually like quail eggs and dove eggs, like smaller ones. and they'll just eat the whole thing. But yeah, they're very awkward eaters. Cute. But now we could go to the next slide. Also, they're protected. They're federally protected in Arizona. So if you find one in your yard, don't try to harm it or kill it. There's removal services, or if you can encourage it out of your yard, that's fine. But yeah, they are protected. So just keep that in mind. We have tons of non-venomous snakes. Some of these you would see more often than others as common. Like in the garden, we have little thread snakes, which are the favorite food of coral snakes up top, which is why you don't see many coral snakes in captivity, because then you have to have a whole collection of these smaller snakes to feed them. We have gopher snakes over off to the right. Well, a gopher snake, a night snake. Night snakes are very nocturnal. You would likely see those in a garden. They really like to eat small invertebrates and lizards and things. And you have a garter. We have all kinds of different garter snakes out here, checkered garters, blackneck garters. And then we have a long-nosed snake, which you're mostly going to see that like on the far east side of town. They like really sandy, washy areas. But you wouldn't see those in town. And underneath that is another long-nosed snake. Looks like a king snake, but there's a king snake right next to it to the left. So long-nosed snakes are really cool. They tend to have red in them, but that one was just completely void of red. It was just black and white. But they have these weird little like patchy marks, and they're black. Like it's not a solid black band like a king snake would be. It's like there's little white dots in the black. And their head's shaped a little different. Not that you really need to know the idea of any of these. If you see a snake in your yard, if it's not a rattlesnake and not a coral snake, it's a harmless, non-venomous snake. They might bluff and try to strike at you and scare you or whatever, but they're not going to be harmful at all. And most of them don't get very big. The gopher snake gets pretty big. That's the largest snake in the state. They can get up to about 7 feet. Yeah, they can eat full-size squirrels, which is pretty impressive. But most of these snakes are pretty mellow. Oh, I have a lyre snake on the bottom, a whip snake, which isn't going to be super nocturnal, but this one was eating a bat, which is why I included it, because they eat all kinds of crazy things. Then we have a banded sand snake. We have lots of fossorial snakes, which are snakes that like to hang out underground, especially underneath plants. So if you're ever pulling up plants, that is one of the snakes you might see. There's a couple other species too that they just love digging under root systems and stuff. But that's just a little preview of non-venomous snakes. We can go to the next slide. And we got some venomous snakes, mostly just the common ones. I didn't get too crazy here. We have 13 rattlesnake species in Arizona. And then the 14th venomous snake is the coral snake, of course. So the three main species we get here are going to be the diamondback, western diamondback, the blacktail is the top left. And you can't really see the tail there, but their tail is completely black instead of being banded like the diamondback. I guess you can't see that tail either. And then that one's a tiger rattlesnake, which had insane camouflage. But over off to the left is another tiger that's a little more orange. They can be orange or gray. If you live by any rocky areas, west side or east side, you can see tigers. Blacktails tend to be more foothill areas, really anywhere. And then diamondbacks are by far most common in the Tucson area. So you'll see those all the time. Yeah, and then our little coral snakes over there. We don't really have anything that looks like a coral snake, except maybe that long nose, but they're not that red. Next slide. Yeah, there's a lot of rhymes to tell apart different snakes, like red touch black, venom black, red touch yellow, you're an unlucky fellow, which is true mostly like in the Southwest, but if you go to other parts of the world, there's tons of species of coral snakes that don't listen to those rules. And here we have a mountain king snake that can be those similar colors in a little bit of a different order. They get bigger. Our coral snake's pretty small. It's like finger thin at the thickest, and they maybe get up to like a foot, maybe foot and a half long at maximum. So they have tiny little mouths, and there's actually no reported fatalities from a coral snake in Arizona, which is cool. But even to bite you, they'd have to bite like the thinnest skin on your hands to even get their mouth over, because their heads are so tiny. Um, yeah, but rhymes can be helpful, but not always reliable. All right, so this is my last slide with animals in it, but this is just kind of to show you what you might see actually in the garden is not so obvious signs of snakes. And these aren't super hidden. I mean, this one has a flashlight on it. This is actually at nighttime, but that's a tiger rattlesnake that went into the middle of a prickly pear, and they love hiding in plants. Um, and then another tiger over there just under some bushes, and then that diamondback, which is nicely hidden in the shade of just a random little, I don't even know what that is, little tiny plant. But a lot of rattlesnake bites happen in the yard these days. Luckily, it's not from people intentionally messing with the snakes, but I've heard a story where a guy thought he left his hose running at night and he went to go turn it off. And it was near his hose, but when he went to reach down, it was actually a rattlesnake coiled up in his hose, like on top of it, and it bit him in the hand as he reached down. So always bring a flashlight with you at night. Um, yeah, snake bites happen like going into the garage or just walking out into your yard because you're just not expecting it, especially if you have a fenced yard. But they find ways to get in. They can get in through rodent burrows. They're pretty good climbers too. Um, there's different types of fences that might be harder for rattlesnakes to climb, but they can find ways to get in. So it's just always a good idea to be aware, keep your eyes out, kind of expect to see one so you're never going to be surprised if one finally does get into your yard. And there's all kinds of removal services and neighbors, if you're lucky, that have a bucket ready to go scoop them up and relocate. Sometimes the fire department will do it, but it depends on where the city you live. But yeah, they're usually snakes. They're really smart. They have a good memory. They make their rounds going towards different yards because they know where all the resources are. When we relocate snakes at work, we keep them within like a mile radius of where we found them. So we have different like quadrants we release them in based off of where we found them. And the fire department most of the time does the same thing. They'll release them pretty close to your home, so you might actually end up seeing them again. But that's if you move them too far out, especially as an adult, they're likely just going to die because they don't know where all the resources are. So they're kept pretty close to home, but they're not very confrontational if you keep out of their space. Obviously, if you have pets or dogs, it's definitely valid to want to remove them from your yard, and that's fine. But try to not do it yourself because those interactions most of the time lead to bites. We can go to the last slide, and it's just a nice, pretty sunset a couple months ago on my way home from work. So any questions about any animals you might see in your garden? Messing around the mic.
If you have any questions, just raise your hand. I'm going to come over to you and let you talk.
So I'm always trying to convince people to like spiders. And like I feel like you might be the same way. Like how do you everybody I know, like they even get mad at me for like posting spider pictures on my Instagram or whatever. And it's like, how do you convince people to embrace these creatures that are like not as beloved as the butterflies and
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our fears are taught to us when we're younger. There are some innate fears for sure, so it's hard to just get over that hump in itself. Um, I mean, visually, I think spiders are really cool, but other people are freaked out by them. So I think explaining behaviors and like benefits for us can kind of lighten people up to the idea because then they're seeing. Um, I mean, that's one reason I love. Obviously, I showed a lot of arachnid slides, but I love working with and talking about these animals because there's a lot of space to try and educate people and try to show them like they're not easily lovable and they do a lot of good stuff for us and they're all over the place. And how often have you been bitten by a spider? I don't think ever in my life I've been bitten by a spider. yeah, I mean, my cats are more painful than most of the bugs I'm in contact with. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think just general education of the cool things that they do or cool little traits they have, like that green lynx spider I was talking about, it shoots the venom. That's not really a good fact to share if you're trying to warm people up to them. But they're really cool spiders. They actually have a winter change of clothes. So during the spring, they're vibrant green and sometimes have this like chevron marking on their abdomen.
They're so
And then going
pretty.
into winter, their abdomen turns white and they'll get like a green stripes and they look like a little watermelon. And it's just like a winter coat. They'll only live usually for about a year. They're so cool. They have like little spotted legs and little pink polka dots, and they have these very bristly hairs, which I like. And then they're kind of translucent. And just like the visual, I think, is so cool. Like you don't really get to see these animals up close. And I mean, I draw a lot of these things that I see. So a lot of the bugs, even on this screen here, you can't see them super clearly, but I like to draw things up close so you get a different view than what you would with that like tiny speck running across your floor because they're really complex and colorful and have all kinds of shapes and like weird hairs and like little mechanical movements they do or special organs or special springing capabilities. They all have these talents that people don't really know because we just see a speck, when you don't know what it is or what it's doing. It's just in your space and you don't want it there. And I don't know. I think giving people an up close view and then sharing cool facts about them. I don't know. It's hard for me when people don't like spiders because I'm like, but why? Like they're so cool. Like that's weird. Why wouldn't you?
So did you say there were 1,000 species of tarantula?
No,
No,
in the Tucson area, so there's over a dozen
a dozen. I
species.
misheard
Yeah.
that. A dozen. It feels like 1,000.
No, over a dozen. Might have sounded like 1,000, but
A dozen. Okay.
Yeah.
So how long do tarantulas live?
Ooh, so males have a shorter lifespan. Male tarantulas, maybe 3 to 5 years, maybe give or take a little bit. And they are sexually mature within 3 years usually. Females, on the other hand, 8 years is the time it takes them to sexually mature, and they can live for about 20 years.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah. So
Okay.
females are very long-lived. Males, as soon as they mate the first time, they die.
Like right after?
Um, Usually, yes, because so mating of tarantulas, for anyone who wants to know. So the male actually has these special mouth parts that he puts the sperm into the female, like with his mouth parts, and usually immediately after. So males have special hooks, like kind of on his elbows, his front legs. So when they're mating, they're doing this weird TP thing like this, and then he's using his mouth parts to put the sperm in. And then as soon as he's done, he slowly tries to like back away and he tries to run away because she will immediately chomp down on him and eat him to basically fuel all the babies.
I did
So
not know
yeah, the
that.
females will try to eat him immediately.
But
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
feel like I've seen the same tarantula in my yard every single year, and I've lived there for 8 years. So that's why I wanted to know.
Oh, yeah, it might be
It's a blonde one.
a female. And females tend to have more round abdomens. Males have like a skinny abdomen in relation to their head size. And also those little hooks are little good indicators if you get that close to see them. Males wander a lot, and then after the first couple of years, they're gone. They can establish homes, but females have like the more permanent burrows they'll make and live there for life unless they're forced to move. That's pretty cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Jumping spiders are my favorite.
Jumping spiders are super cool.
I've had them sit on my hand and stare at me.
Yeah, they're very aware.
Yeah, jumping spiders seem like a really good introductory spider.
I
for
know.
cutesies.
I did include one jumping spider picture, but I didn't have a lot at nighttime. Because I think my eyes more on the ground and they tend to be in the plants. But jumping spiders are awesome. They're vibrant and beautiful. We have a lot of large species here. Have big red abdomens, all kinds of colors, but the red abdomen ones are really cool. And they have like these metallic green chelicerae, their little mouth parts. So it looks like pretty nail polish. And then their legs are like black and white polka dots. They're really pretty. Yeah.
So I have been on a trend lately of uncovering Western banded geckos that really want to be left alone. The one I uncovered most recently yelled at me. So we got squeaked at and then tried. It's actually when I did the graphic for this talk, it's that one. So I've been trying to, like build a new home for them if I have just destroyed their home. For a Western banded gecko, if I am building them a new home because I am a home wrecker, any specifications on what I should be doing for the angry little squeaky reptiles?
Well, like mini lizards, they just like really like horizontally compressed surfaces, especially geckos. They just like to hide under really tight surfaces. So if you see like a random piece of like, I say trash, but like metal or wood on the side of the road, if you lift it, there's probably a gecko. They love just hiding. They just throw a piece of wood on the ground and they'll probably hide. Yeah, nothing special, just lots of tight, flat spaces. Yeah. They're not high maintenance. Yeah. Any others? If you guys ever have questions or want things to be ID'd, feel free to send me an email. I like IDing stuff and just seeing fun pictures.
What is your favorite snake?
My favorite snake? Venomous or non-venomous?
Non-venomous.
Native or non-native?
Native.
Native, non-venomous, you said? That's so hard. There's so many cool non-venomous snakes. There's lyre snakes are really cute. So I did have a picture up there. They're really pretty, and I've seen them in interesting habitats. They like rocky habitats, but they have these giant orange eyes, and then this tiny little head, and they're actually rear-fanged venomous. So a couple of the snakes I included up there, like the night snake, and then the lyre snake, and even hognose, which was not up there, they're rear-fanged venomous. So they're not dangerous to humans, but they specialize on eating lizards. And they have a special venom that basically immobilizes lizards. And they have to get the lizard in their mouth like horizontally so it reaches those back fangs. And then they just sit there with like this lizard hanging out of their mouth like a big old sandwich. And then it just dies and they'll turn it around and eat it. So maybe a lyre snake, but that's hard. That's a hard question. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. Yeah. It was nice. Yeah.
So let's give a big hand. Thank you
Thank
all
you.
very much for coming.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. That was very